Caleb Williams and Travion Henderson are two of the biggest sleepers and best values in DFS this week. We tell you why, plus reveal our other top sleepers and best DFS plays for week 2 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every moment count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward Mazda Move and Be Moved. All right, we are going to get into our favorite sleepers at each position. We'll each give you our favorite quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end sleeper of the week, which also goes along with their DFS value in case you play, FanDuel and you want to get in a lineup on there. And then of course we'll always finish off our Friday episode with our PrizePicks picks of the week. But quickly, let's react to Thursday Night Football because we got the Commanders at the Packers, and this Packers defense is just looking elite out there. And I mean, if you started any of the Commanders running backs, you're really sad because all of them, all the rushing guys got exactly 17 rushing yards for the Commanders. Eckler, Jaden Daniels, and then Bill Krosky got all 17 rushing yards, no touchdowns. What you think it's just a tough matchup and that's it?
Well, keep in mind, the Commanders actually had more success than the Lions. They had 51 yards rushing. The Lions had 46. These are the two highest scoring offenses in the NFL, or the NFC side from last year. So when you look at that, I mean, this is a legit defense. I mean, it stops everything at this point. Look, you don't have to worry about sweating your matchups in week 3 because the Browns are playing the Packers in Cleveland. So not a lot to worry about there, but don't play your Browns as much as possible. And you wouldn't stretch yourself, but definitely not in that matchup. But yeah, bummer. It might be the last we'll see of Austin Eckler. I mean, tearing his Achilles that late in his career. I mean, it's brutal now. What do we do here? We have Jeremy McNichols. We have Chris Rodriguez probably going to be back active. Will they go out and get somebody? They had a specific role for Eckler, right? It was a short passing role. We'll see if JCM can pick up that slack or do they have to go elsewhere to find that role, right? If JCM can get those catches, it's going to help him going forward. But I don't know if they like McNichols in that role or want Rodriguez back. So it's an absolute mess. I mean, looked really good, right? Last week with JCM and Bill doing his thing. On one hand, Bill now has the backfield ahead of Eckler for sure the rest of the way, but are they going to make this another piecemeal committee with those other guys? So that's my concern there. And then another concern, this compression of this Commanders offense. Once again, it took them a while to throw to Terry McLaurin downfield last year. Look, Deebo Samuel and Zach Ertz. We said this could happen, right? That it could be compressed. These two guys could maybe be the big targets, and so far they have been, Michelle.
Yeah, it's been the Deebo Samuel show. Now, Terry McLaurin did lead the team in targets, but just 5 receptions, 48 yards.
Yeah,
definitely the slow start for McLaurin. You might just have to, wait to see it before you keep plugging him in. Like, it's good the targets are there, but you need the production to go. Mm-hmm. It seems like Deebo Samuel is looking like a weekly start, and you were definitely right on Tucker Kraft this week. I mean, the guy did whatever he wanted. 6 receptions, 124 yards, and a touchdown. He was all of the Packers passing, receiving offense yesterday. So, Josh Jacobs got his touchdown like he always does. Pretty much everything on the Packers side. There's not a wide receiver you're going to want to start anytime soon. But apparently Tucker Kraft is a solid start. And then obviously Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, they kind of tricked us a little bit, right? I mean, Luke Musgrave, forget it. He's not even their deep tight end anymore. That's also Tucker Kraft. He's a red zone tight end. He's their best receiver at this point. Look, we were a little bit off on this one, but the evidence was to the contrary, right? You added Matthew Golden, you had Romeo Doubs, Ontaman Wick still doing his thing, Jaden Reed, now he's hurt again. He was a big deal, right? You thought, okay, these receivers, let's go. Christian Watson coming back. No, it's still Tucker Kraft, the guy that he's trusting the most here. So this was a little weird, right, that it's been such a Kraft-heavy offense the first 2 weeks with all their receiving help, but that just shows you, man, like they need to have a reliable guy to make catches all over the field. Right now, Kraft is a guy creating mismatches, playing off the running game. Again, this is a defensive team, so they don't need a lot from the big play receivers. I mean, they just need a guy to finish in the red zone. They have that with Tucker Kraft. They had a nice little pass to Romeo Doubs for the first touchdown. So, again, a very efficient, run-heavy offense. I think these receivers are going to disappoint in Kraft again. Maybe we just didn't see all this coming, that Kraft would be the guy and dominate in every single way, but that's what's happening right now. And we liked Ertz a lot, so that worked out like as a sleeper deep, and he's been fantastic. I mean, he looks like old vintage Ertz, and Kraft seems like the same. So we needed these tight ends to rise up, especially George KIttle and all these other things happening.
Now let's start and dig into our sleepers of the week. Again, we'll each give you our favorite sleeper at quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Vinny, who is your favorite sleeper quarterback for week 2?
Yeah, I was trying to dig through the values. I mean, you have J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix playing in primetime, as well as Geno Smith. So they're off the table here, as well as the doubleheader with Baker Mayfield and C.J. Stroud as part of that on Monday night. So Drake May, going back to that Drake May to me compares a lot favorably to Daniel Jones in terms of size, athleticism, trying to make plays. The Dolphins just gave up a huge all-around game, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a very efficient passing day for Daniel Jones. I know playing in Miami in that heat is a little bit tougher, but look, if Drake May can't get it done here, then I'm going to start worrying about Drake May, but I'm willing to take that shot at 6,800 on FanDuel. I think he just has a lot of upside. He just has to get the people involved, right? I think once he kind of streamlines Stephon Diggs, Hunter Henry, Kayshon Boutte, or somebody else that's going to help him, and they're more encouraging for him to take off and run, you'll see the numbers, and this matchup definitely screams for that.
Now, my guy is only $100 more, and I would much prefer to spend that extra $100 to get him. It's Caleb Williams going against the Lions in the Dome this week. That 6,900 16th among quarterbacks on the main slate, so only Drake May, Cam Ward, Tua, Joe Flacco, Bryce Young, Russell Wilson, and Spencer Rattler are cheaper. And Caleb Williams, although he didn't look much improved, right, in his first game under Ben Johnson, he still had a great fantasy performance, put up 24.2 points against the Vikings. He was willing to use his legs, right? And that's what we want him to keep doing. 58 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown in week 1. But I mean, we've seen these big blow up games from him at the end of his rookie season too. He had a 26-point game, a 27-point game, a 23-point game. So we've seen these games, and both of his games against the Lions last year were fantastic. 26 points at Detroit in week 13 last year, and then 23 points at home against the Lions in week 16 last year. So I think he's going to get it done. I think the Lions offense is going to get it done against the Bears, which will mean Caleb Williams has to put up some points.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, if you want me to just do the math for you guys at home, like you're looking for the 3x return. So that would be if you get 20.4 points, you'll get that from what you want with Caleb Williams, and then you get 20.7, you'll need that from Drake May. So that's just putting it all together on FanDuel. That's a path to what you need, right? And that's what we're trying to find, right, with these sleepers. The best bang for the buck. And I think both these guys can provide bang for the buck. I get it, saving the $100, but the bottom line is we want both these guys to score 20 plus fantasy points in FanDuel, and really we want them to score 25 to 30 points in most of our leagues this week to feel really good about them.
Yeah, I think Caleb Williams is a solid start in just regular leagues. Now, we're going to take a quick break, but then we'll get into our running back, wide receiver, and tight end favorite sleepers of the week right after we hear from a couple of our sponsors.
All right, this episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is brought to you by DoorDash. It's almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown Thursday's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. This player delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down for you. Look, it was a fantastic game for Tucker Kraft. He was huge. If you played him at tight end, you're off to a great start. Look, you'll take Hundy in a touch from your guy all the time, and he was just outstanding. Made big plays. He was unstoppable in the red zone. He could not be covered by the Commanders, and that's great because they have the Browns next week. So when the pressure is on, Tucker Kraft came through as the go-to guy for Jordan Love. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, you know that he's going to keep getting it done. And just like Tucker Kraft delivered for the Packers, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash streaks, you can save every Saturday order, stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. This episode, Locked On Fantasy Football, is also brought to you by FanDuel. It's a great time to get on the action. It's week 2. The NFL season is underway. FanDuel is making sure you're ready for all the kickoffs with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can still get on this offer. You can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Check it out. FanDuel, it's a lot of fun because it fits however you like to bet, player props, building same-game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action folds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays, all the days that you have NFL. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Get on the action here in week 2. All right, Michelle, we do need to dive into next our running back, wide receiver, and tight end sleepers that we want to also look at FanDuel value. So, Michelle, we talked about one part of the Patriots offense against the Dolphins' stinky defense. You're going to talk about another part.
Yeah, I'm going with their rookie, Travion Henderson, against the Dolphins. He's sitting at $5,300 on FanDuel. That's less than guys like Ray Davis, Brian Robinson Jr., and the same as Justice Hill. And I get it. Mike Vrabel is being an annoying old school coach and making sure his veterans get more playing time for whatever reason. But and Ramondre Stevenson did start and did play the majority of snaps in that backfield, played 65% of the team's offensive snaps, while Henderson was stuck at just 35%. But despite playing on 21 fewer snaps, Henderson had nearly double the scrimmage yards as Stevenson because Stevenson is not good. So Henderson was way more productive, averaging 5.4 yards on the ground to just Stevenson's 2.1. It was nice that Henderson at least was very productive in the passing game, saw 6 targets, caught all 6 of those. And Stevenson, I mean, when he was on the field, he just wasn't efficient at all to make the team feel confident to stick with him. He failed on both of his third down carries, gaining 0 yards over those 2 attempts. He failed on the 1 carry around the goal line. Well, Henderson had a first down carry, got 14 yards on that. And I just think he's their best weapon by far on offense, and they can't keep him off the field. Like, Mike Vrabel needs to be smarter than that. So I think he gets more playing time this week.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, the matchup is so good that you figure everyone can get it done here against the Dolphins. Hopefully, hopefully this is a trend where we can exploit the Dolphins almost like the anti-Packers for what we were looking for in fantasy football. Now, I'm also going to an old school coach, and it's really sad that Caleb Johnson is basically not doing anything anymore that we thought. He's not even getting really on the field to do anything enough, but Jaylen Warren is, and he's the clear-cut guy right now. I'm just surprised how many touches he's getting. Look, he was very effective. Look, we knew he was going to have a receiving role. He's fantastic at that. He's a good change of pace back, but I think they wanted just maybe a little bit more juice when Aaron Rodgers is on the field, a little bit of experience there for pass protection and running routes. So that's why Jaylen Warren is on the field. Now he gets the Seahawks at home. The Seahawks actually contained Christian McCaffrey on the ground last week. Well, because, again, there was a lot of things they didn't have to worry about in the receiving core. But you do have to worry about the Steelers stretching the field with DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers is on fire. You got to worry about those guys downfield. So Jaylen Warren should see a little bit of running room. We know he's going to see a lot of receiving room. They're not very good at covering backs out of the backfield in Seattle. It's clear that's not how their offense or defense is designed. Jaylen Warren, however, is going to have that big role. So I love it. Get him while he's cheap. He's a steal at $5,800. A very cheap play here for a guy that's getting that many touches in that good of a matchup.
Yeah, Jaylen Warren is clearly the back that the Steelers feel most comfortable with. He is electric. He can break off some plays. I like that pick by you. Now, moving on to wide receiver. I'm going deep here, but I actually think it's a really solid play for, I mean, you can't get any cheaper really for a player in your DFS lineups. And it's Olamide Zaccheaus. The Bears wide receiver going up against the Lions. Listen, I did not think I'd be talking about Olamide Zaccheaus when we're talking about the stacked Bears offense, right? They have so many weapons. But somehow it seems like Zaccheaus is going to be playing a huge role in this offense. I mean, in the preseason, when we saw that whole starting group together, of course, it was Zaccheaus that came down with the touchdown, right? And we're like, oh, of course. But then in week 1, he gets 7 targets. It was the second most on the team behind only Rome Odunze. And I mean, he's brand new to this team, but last year when he played on the Commanders, at the end of the year, he was putting up big fantasy games with the Commanders when needed. 2 of the last 3 games of the 2024 regular season, Olamide Zaccheaus scored 21.5 fantasy points in week 16 and 19.3 points in week 17. So it's not like we haven't seen these big performances out of him. And it seems like Caleb Williams trusts him. So the Lions can definitely be scored on, and they allowed the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers since the start of last season. I'm in on Olamide Zaccheaus being a pretty solid starter this week.
Yeah, the people that have DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, if they're trying for Luther
Colston
Burden,
Loveland.
any of these guys, they're like, what are you doing to us? But we're not doing it to you. Ben Johnson is doing it to you. Caleb Williams is doing it to you. And you just have to follow what's going on. And look, who was Ben Johnson's favorite guy? He's Amon-Ra St. Brown, the guy in the slot that was doing all the dirty work in Detroit. So if you can't get it downfield, you're going to throw a lot to Olamide Zaccheaus, otherwise known as Oz. I love that nickname. Well, it's natural. But I've got a big name, Michelle. I'm just going to counter your deep sleeper to a guy that's still a sleeper to me. You actually led the team in targets in week 1 that we didn't consider, but it's Travis Hunter. Like, he wasn't all that effective in week 1, but the Jaguars also didn't need to throw the ball much. They were dominating the Panthers. They had that weird lightning delay, and they just wanted to get out of there, run the ball, and win. Now they're going to have to throw. They're playing the Bengals on the road. This is going to be a potential shootout, and I want a lot of pieces of this as much as possible. You want the receivers all around, of course, Jace T. Higgins, Brian Thomas Jr., but let's give Travis Hunter a shot now. During Thursday Night Football, cute commercial with him and Trevor Lawrence. Look, they're buddies. They want to get going. They want this team to turn around and start winning. They need to hook up and start going. And they're going to look at this and say, the Bengals are slow starters. We can go in there, win. Hunter might play a few more snaps defensively, but he's only 5,900 on FanDuel. They need to get him going, because if it gets him going, Brian Thomas Jr. will be harder to cover. Brenton Strange will be harder to cover. The running game will open up more with Travis Etienne. So this Jaguars offense is teasing us with its potential explosiveness. Look, Lawrence is the key here. He's got to unlock it more. But again, if they needed Lawrence more last week, I think he would have put up the numbers. But again, it was just all the conditions. So I do like Travis Hunter to maybe have his first offensive breakout game in this one.
Nice. And I do think that this game should be high scoring and that both of these offenses should look much better in the Jaguars and the Bengals. So I'm excited for that game. I'm going back to this Patriots-Dolphins game. I did not think I'd have this many Patriots to talk about, but I'm going with Hunter Henry as my favorite sleeper tight end of the week, only at $4,900 on FanDuel. But I think he's a solid start across just normal leagues. If you need a guy to replace, a George Kittle, or if you had a Mark Andrews or TJ Hawkinson and don't want to stick with that. But Hunter Henry led the Patriots with 8 targets in week 1. And overall, it was a solid enough day for a tight end. 4 receptions, 66 yards. Obviously, a touchdown is what we're looking for here to go with that to make him a good DFS play. But in the 8 career games that Henry has seen at least 5 targets from Drake May, he's averaged 10.2 fantasy points per game in half PPR. The Dolphins just got steamrolled by the Colts last week, and they let rookie tight end in his very first NFL game, Tyler Warren, put up 7 receptions for 76 yards against them. So I do think Henry is one of the safer bets of the week to not kill you. And then also if he can get that touchdown, then he's going to be a massive steal at that cost.
Yeah, that's interesting that you picked that, because mine is kind of adjacent to yours in a weird way, and I'll explain how. You have Drake May. I have Drake May and Hunter Henry. That's a new combination. This is the best Hunter Henry could have fantasy points since he was with Mac Jones. Mac Jones is now starting for the 49ers. Now, I feel like I'm also going Jaguars adjacent on this one, because Mac Jones was in Jacksonville last year. Guess who else was in Jacksonville last year? Luke Farrell. And I know Jake Tonga scored the touchdown, the winner. It was a great play that he made for Brock Purdy in the matchup against Seattle. But Luke Farrell is the next guy up. I liked him. I'll go back to Ohio State. I like this kid. I think he could have gotten more opportunities. But Mac Jones, used to throwing them in Jacksonville. They were on the second team together, so they were throwing together there. They were on the second team together here in San Francisco. There's a bit of a sneaky chemistry here that I want to look at. Now, they're going to have to expand the targets for Luke Farrell. There's no doubt about it, right? George KIttle's down. They didn't know that going into the game last week, and now they do. They don't have Brock Purdy. They don't have George KIttle. They got to make it work with the tight end. And I think Luke Farrell, keep in mind, there's a couple games where Ross Dwelley, the former backup, just came in and smashed it for KIttle. So maybe you don't have to look far for a KIttle replacement for this particular week. And also the matchup is very good against the Saints this week. So I like that a lot. Trey McBride was in that matchup last week. So only $4,700. So I went $200 cheaper. Surprisingly, he's kind of expensive, but I do like Luke Farrell a lot this week.
Yeah, if you're going to go with one, go with Farrell over Tonjes. But it does seem like no tight end ever steps up when George Kittle's out, but this offense has nobody else. Normally when Kittle's out, they still have Debo and Ayuk, and now it's literally just pure Saul and Christian McCaffrey. So I like that pick by you. We are going to transition to our PrizePicks picks of the week to close out today's show and this week's weeks of shows right after we hear from another one of our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is, of course, Josh Allen bringing the Bills to win after being down 14 points to the Ravens in the fourth quarter. Nothing was going to stop that man from getting that win. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, let's finish up today's episode by going through our PrizePicks pick of the week. We'll each give you three. Vinny, what's your top one?
Yeah, I'm going back to the Jaylen Warren well, so to speak. And I looked at this number and I was like, really? That's really the number? Okay, so Christian McCaffrey, by the way, 73 receiving yards. He was just peppered with targets in the matchup against Seattle. That was his biggest ticket to fantasy production in week one. Jaylen Warren is a specialist at receiver, and his number is at 15.5 receiving yards. I mean, Jaylen Warren basically needs 2 catches from Aaron Rodgers to make this happen against the Seahawks. So I think it does happen. I'm trying to dig deeper to find some numbers. There will be some discrepancies, maybe being a little bit behind the curve there on a player's particular role and what they're doing, but this is just too good. Like, I just had to jump on it. I mean, see, again, I saw their coverage. It wasn't all that good on running backs. It's been a problem for Seattle and Mike McDonald. They just don't have the linebackers that he had in Baltimore. So I like it 15.5, more than that number of receiving yards for Jaylen Warren.
Now, my favorite one, I can't believe it's a demon pick. Baker Mayfield, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. And when I say demon pick, that means you make more money if he does get more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. They're saying this is a harder one to hit, which I think is crazy since Mayfield leads the NFL in passing touchdowns since the start of 2024. He's tied with the most with Joe Burrow. He has 6 straight games with multiple passing touchdowns, at least 3 passing touchdowns in 4 of those 6 games. And he has 9 games with 3+ passing touchdowns since 2024. That's the second most in the NFL behind only Joe Burrow. But like, I get Houston held Stafford to 1 touchdown last week. Matthew Stafford just hasn't been throwing a lot of touchdowns for many years now, right? So I don't take much value into that. The Texans allowed 31 passing touchdowns last year. That was the 3rd most in the league. We got some injuries to that secondary. I think Baker Mayfield easily throws 2 touchdowns in this game.
All right, that's interesting because as everyone knows, if you listen to the quarterback show, I feel a little edgy on Baker Mayfield this week. Like, I think it could go either way. It's a little bit of a boom or bust play for me, but I can also see the boom aspect of it. He could actually get the 2 because they need that in Tampa if they're going to win at Houston in primetime. So that is a interesting pick that I would consider by you, especially with the demon action there that you're going to get. Now, I have a different quarterback, and I have a rushing guy Now, I'm not going obscure. Look, I'm not going obscure with the Russian guy. I'm just going to tell you this week. I'm just going bread and butter here with Justin Fields. Look, we don't know if it was Lamar Jackson alone, but the Bills did really struggle to contain their quarterback running game last week. And actually, Justin Fields, if you look at it, didn't totally smash the Steelers. He got just under 50 rushing yards in that game, right? Very effective overall. He was doing it with his legs, but I look at Fields, 44.5 rushing yards against the Bills. This is at home as well. He looked really good at home against the Steelers, doing a little bit of things. And if he hits last week's number, even if it's barely over, it counts. So I look at that 44.5. Again, the Bills, I don't know what's happening with them, but they definitely could not handle this type of look, right, with the zone read and all that option stuff going on. So it could be a bit of a trouble spot here between just looking at Justin Fields and Breece Hall, trying to figure out the mesh point and running and all that. So this could be a very nice game for Justin Fields, and he might need to do some garbage time running as well if the Bills have a lead.
Yeah, he's going to have to keep up with Josh Allen. He's going to have to use those legs. Now, both of my last two picks are rushing yards. I have Travis Etienne more than 56.5 rushing yards against the Bengals, and Zach Charbonnet more than 44.5 rushing yards against the Steelers. With Travis Etienne, there's no Tank Bigsby there anymore, right? He already dominated the snaps and the touches in week 1. No Tank Bigsby to even worry about. He's going to dominate them. I'm not worried about Bishal Tutin or LaQuint Allen taking too much work. And last week, 16 carries. I think he gets that workload again against the Bengals. He's had 16 career games with at least 15 carries, and Etienne has averaged 86.3 rushing yards per game in those games. The Bengals are a good matchup. They let a player rush for at least 55 yards against them 14 games last season. Week 1, they didn't allow running, but the Browns don't have a run game, so who cares? And then with Zach Charbonnet, more than 44.5 rushing yards. Apparently, he's a starter. Apparently, he's the lead back for the Seahawks, I should say. And after week 1, there's no reason to switch it because Kenneth Walker looked terrible, right? He only averaged 2 yards per carry. And Charbonnet looked much better. He's a really good running back. He played on 17% more of the snaps. So I fully expect him to be the lead back again. And the Steelers just let Breece Hall put up 107 rush yards against them. Their run defense looked really leaky. So I like both of those. Again, it's Etienne more than 56.5 and Zach Charbonnet more than 44.5.
Yeah, until we see some adjustments, keep in mind, these are two of the backfields we weren't sure about exactly how the touches were going to be distributed, but they're pretty clear now the way they're going. Look, Walker's still around and he could be a factor at some point. We know the competition has gone for Etienne, but Charbonnet looked better. And you saw last week there against the Steelers, Breece Hall had that juice and burst and looked pretty good. And the Bengals, we know, still stink overall against the run. Just take all the combined production of Raheem Sanders and Dylan Sampson and whoever else they wanted to throw there. Travis Etienne can build on that and do a lot more as an individual. Now, my last is also a rushing one, and James Conner was actually a little bit underwhelming in week 1. Everyone was jumping on Trey Benson, looking at Kyler Murray. Again, the Saints might hang in some games because their defense is not as terrible as we think. That's actually one of their better things, where the offense is terrible overall. But their defense is capable, especially when they're in New Orleans. But this game is back in Arizona for James Conner. The Panthers, speaking of Travis Etienne, gave up a big game to him all over, and 62.5. He's still got volume. He didn't really crack 40 yards, but in the end, James Conner still got the 12 carries. And if he gets 12 carries, that might be enough to push it over 62.5 against the Panthers' run defense. So if he gets anything close to volume, and the game script should be positive second half, Conner and Benson should get a lot of work in the second half. So I do like James Conner over more than 62.5 rushing yards there because, again, it's going to be one of the best matchups, continue to be, against the Panthers' run defense.
Yeah, the Panthers were so bad against the run last year, allowing by far the most rushing yards and fantasy points to running backs. And then they allowed 200 rushing yards to the Jaguars in week 1. So it doesn't look like they got any better. So I absolutely love James Conner this week. But that will be it for today's episode. We have you prepped for week 2. We wish you the best of luck. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen of the day. The NFL season is finally here. So for your second listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler the Madman Rowland gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back with you on Monday. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Bye, y'all.